In 2004, Nintendo released their new console, the Nintendo DS. What made this console extraordinary is that you could play fully fledged 3D games on the go for the first time, and to show this incredible feature, Nintendo decided to release a remake of Mario 64, named Mario 64 DS. It was great at the time that in 8 years, a main console game transferred to a handheld. This re-release did many things right, such as new characters, new stars, and even mini-games. However, no game is without issues, and this game is no stranger to that, which is what I want to talk about in this video. Alright, let's hop into it. Now, the first glaring issue that comes to mind is the controls. One questionable thing about the DS is that despite having 3D games, it only had a D-pad and didn't have any sort of circle pad or joystick. One of the things that made the N64 game so fun to control was just controlling Mario, because using the joystick made him feel really fun and easy to control. This is partially the reason why messing around in Peach's castle is so fun. However, here you're limited to just 4 directions on a D-pad, which is a massive issue people have with this game. It makes the controls very stiff, and makes goofing off and platforming much harder than it is on the N64. Also, instead of running automatically, there's a dedicated run button now, making things even more stiff. These stiff and weird controls make playing sort of unfun, especially when doing narrow platforming or going across tight ledges. It also feels really slow, and I don't expect it to be a Sonic game, but I would like to feel as fast as the original. The first time I ever reached hard at a video game was with this game. Platforming in the final level was so annoying. I literally threw my DS across the room, but thankfully it landed on the couch. Most of the later levels suffer a lot from these controls. It makes playing them really unfun. Also, not to mention the awful camera controls. The N64 game did have awful camera controls as well, however, this is just horrendous. You have to hold L and then tilt the camera, but the problem is that it causes you to move a little bit, so tight platforming in levels like Snowman's Land is enraging, and it is so unfun to play. Also, instead of moving while tilting the camera, you have to stop for a few seconds and then readjust it, which really kills the pacing, and it gets super annoying sometimes. Besides the awful controls, this game also lacks creativity in some of its stars and gimmicks. Before I absolutely slander this game, I do think that when it is creative, it is really creative. The minigames have interesting ideas, the bunnies are pretty cool too, and some of the minigames are amazing, like the Mario trampoline game and the Bomb sorting game. I really love those. But now to the actual game. First, a lot of the new stars repeat themselves. The game adds 30 new stars to the game, which is absolutely amazing, but a lot of these stars can repeat themselves. A lot of them just have you collect silver stars or carry the object. I get new content is new content, but here Nintendo really showed that they wanted to do the bare minimum. I don't want to have any sort of new missions or objectives if they're just going to be extremely repetitive and just feel like a chore to do. Now, this game added new characters, which was amazing. However, there are also some issues with these characters. For an example, for some reason, Mario's the only one who can wall jump. This is a basic mechanic, so I don't get why they would gatekeep it like this. However, you can actually see that they really started gatekeeping moves towards certain characters, which is something I will never understand. For an example, the Vanish Cap is now exclusive to Luigi, and the Metal Cap is now exclusive to Wario. If you have to gatekeep abilities just to make characters actually needed to be used, then I would say that's a pretty big sign you shouldn't focus as much as multiple playable characters. With all the broad issues out of the way, let's get into the nitty-gritty of each character. Yoshi is the character you first start off with, and as a result, that makes his moveset one of the most limited to use. Yoshi does not have the strength to break bricks, and he literally can't pick up anything besides swallowing them. These are 2 vital mechanics, so that makes quite a few stars literally impossible because of this, and Yoshi just feels like a side character you can play as in this game, when the other 3 feel like the actual main stars of the game. Get the pun? What they supposedly attempt to remedy these losses is to just give Yoshi his standard abilities in his games, such as swallowing, flutter jumping, and making eggs you can throw. However, there are still a lot of issues with this. The flutter jump kind of locks you in place, and that combined with the already pretty bad controls of this game make this feel terrible to use. I dare you to try to beat any of the later Bowser stages with Yoshi and his flutter jump. It is literally almost impossible. Also, the swallowing enemies and making games thing just doesn't really sit well. Since we're in 3D, it's much harder to swallow enemies, and you have to do it like 3 times just to get it. And throwing is a lot harder since you throw it in a 3D space now. The move was practical since in 2D because you could kill a lot of enemies quickly, but here it just feels impractical to do. That would basically sum up Yoshi's moveset because I feel like it just doesn't need to be used. So I feel like he isn't as good as the other characters. And now we have the opposite of impractical, a character who is way too practical in the form of Luigi. Now, Luigi is basically a copy and paste of his brother, except for one key difference. If you do a backflip, Luigi will start gliding forever until he hits the ground, slowly descending. In my opinion, while this is really fun to do, it absolutely breaks the game in some cases. Tall Mountain becomes hilariously easy. That once Snowman started, Snowman's Land is now a joke, and a lot of the platforming and shifting sand land is just eradicated. There are a lot of cases in this game where I think it wants you to go a certain way, but you can just completely skip it using Luigi. Now, I think this is really satisfying and cool to do, but you just gotta admit that this isn't very good, that you can cheese a large portion of the game using this. Luigi also gets the Vanish Cap, which I would say is the most used out of the caps, making him even more needed. I think Nintendo put so much effort into this guy that Wario ended up being completely useless. Speaking of Wario, let's discuss why I think he's so useless. Wario's ability is that he can break black bricks and he gets to use the metal cap. However, the black bricks barely show up in the game at all. There's only one near Peach's Castle, Jolly Roger Bay, Little Lava Land, and one in that cave level. These get barely used throughout the game, and sometimes they aren't even needed to progress. The metal cap is also used way less than you might think, and I only think it's like used in 2 to 3 stars, which is absolutely nothing. Wario feels like that one character you pull out just to get a specific star, and then you never use him again. It just makes him feel useless compared to Mario, Luigi, and even Yoshi. Now, I have one last nitpick about this game, but it kind of depends on your preference, in which I think this game has a little less charm than the original, and the models and textures actually look worse. Now, obviously, I know the original N64 game looked pretty ugly, and the texture resolution was so low, but I think they have some kind of like a wacky 90s charm. While the new models look great, they look kind of lifeless. This may be just me, but they all look like puppets being controlled by something, and it's kind of unsettling. And also, the models are technically worse in this game, you just didn't notice it. Like, did you know that Mario's model in the N64 game actually had more polygons than the remake? However, textures carry the new one by a long shot. Now, I don't really judge a game based off how it looks, especially a 21-year-old game, but it really shows that Nintendo either only did the bare minimum or had a ton of hardware issues. Now, those are all my issues with the game. Now, based off all of this, you might think that I don't really like this game, but despite all of my issues, I think it's something still worth playing. There is still a lot of good about this game, and those are just my nitpicks and issues with it, but you could have a completely different opinion. So comment down below what you think about this game. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really enjoyed making it, but I'm sorry it came out really late. If you guys want to see more content like this, please subscribe or like the video to let the algorithm know that this is something worth watching. But anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!